everyone. Thanks for logging into tonight's virtual town hall with Andy Fillmore, candidate for mayor of HRM. I'm Mary Navis, and I'll be your moderator tonight. We plan to cover a lot tonight, and we've received tons of questions from our Google form, emails, and comments. That being said, we will try to get to as many people's questions as possible before the night ends. With that being said, I'll turn it over to Andy Fillmore.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm just going to make a check here and make sure I can be heard. Is everything sounding okay? Mary, can you hear me okay?
We're good.
Okay, great. All right. Well, good evening, everyone, and thanks for taking time to join me tonight. My name is Andy Fillmore. I'm a candidate for mayor in this municipal election, and I'm just going to take 4 or 5 minutes to introduce myself and hit a couple of points, and then we'll jump right into the really excellent questions that people have been providing. So, yeah, I'm Andy. I've been a member of Parliament for Halifax for the last 9 years. Prior to that, I had a career as a city planner for 25 years. And, what happened in March of this year was that our mayor for the last 12 years, Mike Savage, announced that he would not be reoffering as mayor of HRM. And so that caused me a great deal of reflection. And I took a look around at our municipality, and I could see a place where the world clearly wants to be. We have succeeded in our aspirations to grow and to attract new residents beyond our wildest dreams. People want to come here to study and then stay here. They want to bring their families to live here. They want to move their companies here. They want to invest here from around the world. And that's had a tremendously positive impact on our communities here in HRM. But we also have to be clear-eyed and honest about the fact that this growth is coming with some growing pains. And I know that everyone who's tuned in tonight can see what those are. They are homelessness, the scarcity of housing that's affordable to a lot of people, to most people even, congestion in the streets, a transit system that's not delivering the service that people require of it. We're living in an era of unaffordability where any expense, including municipal taxes, are very difficult to swallow for a lot of us. And we're also in an era where we're not really getting along, or the municipal government's not really getting along well with the provincial government. So these are all things that when I think about my career and the skills that I've developed over 25 years as a planner and nearly a decade as a parliamentarian, working with all orders of government and civil society and not-for-profits and the private sector, I can't imagine a job description other than mayor of Halifax that so adequately, so precisely fits the body of work that I've been engaged with for my career over these last 35 years. So I'm really excited about the opportunity to address these issues head on. My detailed platform is at andyfillmore.ca, and you can take a look there and see what you think. And you can always offer feedback. Tonight's an opportunity for feedback, and my campaign headquarters phone number and email address is also on that website, andyfillmore.ca. So I'm not going to delve into the contents of that platform. You know where to find it. Rather, I think I'd like to, in a moment, turn to the questions and just underline again, even though I've kind of enumerated some of the challenges we're facing, I'm very optimistic. I am an optimist. I believe not only that the future has never been brighter for HRM and the residents that live here, I believe also that we're really seeing the worst of the affordability and homelessness and housing crisis right now, and that it's only going to get better from here. There are really good tailwinds behind us. Inflation has leveled out. Interest rates are dropping. All three orders of government have come to the table with real solutions that are just now starting to hit the ground. So I'm very optimistic about our future, but I'm also clear-eyed about the challenges that we face. And I think that's what's in store in this mayoralty, in this mayor's election. So why don't we get right into the questions? And I think I'm going to turn back to Mary to moderate that for us.
Thanks, Andy. And yes, as mentioned, we did have some pre-submitted questions. So we're going to start with those, and then we're going to go to the queue and some from the floor as well. So on to our first question. Our first question is Peter in Halifax West End asking, how will you address bike lanes and how to provide a safe environment for cyclists without compromising parking for local businesses or restricting emergency vehicle access due to bike lane curbs?
Great question. A couple of thoughts on bike lanes and then getting to the answer. We have to acknowledge that the future of HRM, the future of Halifax, is a future that includes bike lanes. It includes bicycles, and it includes the ability for people to choose to not to own a car if they don't want to, or to not have that choice forced on them if they can't afford a car. That means making sure that we have viable transit options, but it also means we have to have really viable means of active transportation too. Anything that rolls or walks or that you pedal or scoot, all of those things need to be accommodated in our future as well. Right now, we've all experienced the frustration if we're in a car or a bus of being in bumper to bumper traffic, and we look out the window and we see a bike lane that appears to be empty, and this is very frustrating for a lot of us. And unfortunately, it's creating a backlash against the bike culture that is really starting to grow in HRM. And I don't think it's necessary that we have to design or roll out our bike lanes in a way that creates a backlash. I think that there's a better way that we can do this, and a way that everyone can use the roadway rights of way um, uh, equitably and better than we do today. So one thing is the network right now, it's like a jigsaw puzzle with only a few pieces in place. It's not a complete network. And so, yeah, usership is really low. It's not at all where it needs to be to support a really vibrant biking culture in our city, and what to the full extent that it could be. The other thing is that a lot of the times the way that infrastructure, the bike lane infrastructure, is rolled out, it consumes a tremendous amount of lane width, and this is constricting bus movements. It's constricting commercial vehicle movements that are helping to keep the wheels of industry moving in our city, and it contributes to congestion. So I'm really interested in finding the right scale of the bike lane cross section, the width of it, that that keeps everybody happy, that we can have people moving in buses, moving goods in trucks, moving people on bicycles, all at the same pace, and no one's restricting the movement of each other. And I think sometimes that means not having them all in the same right of way. It might mean that the bus goes over a street or the bike lane goes over a street, and we free up lane width that way. All of this to say, I think that that bikes are part of our future, and the way that we build that system is going to be really important to its success. And to do that, we need to listen to users of the bike lanes, users of the car lanes, users of the transit that are also impacted, and users that and citizens that experience mobility challenges and need to be able to get to the curb, like the gentleman in the West End mentions in his question. There have been some pilots in the city we know that have restricted that kind of access. We've heard that visitorship at the Rebecca Cohen has decreased because of the inability to drop people off at the door, for example. So these are design questions, and design problems can be solved, but we just have to be thoughtful about them and listen to people as we go about them. Thank you for the question. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you, Peter. We're going to move on to the next question so we can get through them all. We've had several people ask, what efficiencies and economic measures will you implement to reduce property taxes for residents concerned about the out of control council?
Yeah. So at the launch of my campaign in July over at the Alderney Theater, I made a very clear statement that if elected mayor, one of my first acts would be to conduct a detailed in-house audit of the way that HRM collects taxes and spends them. Um, by in-house, I don't mean that HRM will conduct the audit. We'll have outside people doing that because we don't want the city checking its own work on this. I mean, an audit of internal services is what I mean, internal service provision. So, right now, I know from having conversations with many people, both clients of HRM and people who work at HRM, that there is a lot of inefficiency in the system there. There's a lot of waste. One example is the approval time for developments is extremely long. It's extremely circular. Multiple reviews, from different departments don't happen concurrently. They happen sequentially, which draws out the whole approval process tremendously. This is very inefficient use of staff time, and it's very inefficient use of citizens' time. So we're going to take the first 2 years and do this detailed audit, really trim the fat, refocus staff and budget on delivering the core services that HRM residents need and deserve: running the buses and ferries on time, filling the potholes, delivering all the services that people expect. And while we get our house in order, I've said that I will work with the council to freeze the municipal tax rate for 2 years. And the point of that is that if we don't have our own house in order, then we don't have any business going back to the taxpayer with a tax rate to ask for more money until we get that house in order. And honestly, it's my greatest hope that if we find the efficiencies I think we can find, significant efficiencies, that maybe we even get to lower the tax rate, and that would really be a positive outcome. But that's what I would like to focus on.
Thank you, Andy. We're going to continue here with the pre-submitted questions. Rob asked, why did you decide to run for mayor of HRM, and how will your experience in federal politics translate to the role of mayor?
Thanks, Rob. I grew up in this place. My father grew up here. I grew up here. I raised my daughter here. Um, my sisters moved away and they regret it. They wish they still lived here. I love this place more than any place on the planet. I became a city planner because of Halifax. I studied in the downtown at Dalhousie because of Halifax. I have spent my life either working to make Halifax better and lift it up, or working at a time abroad so that I could hone the skills to come back and do that work here. And I was so privileged to be able to return home after being abroad for a few years in 2005 and go to work at the city planning department and lead the downtown Halifax plan that led to the Renaissance we see down there now. I was really proud to work on projects like delivering the Central Library, a number of others. But I guess the case I'm illustrating is that work as a planner, and then later my call into public service at the federal level was all rooted in going to work for Halifax, being Halifax's voice at the council chamber when I was a city planner, or Halifax residents' voice in Ottawa when I was an MP. It's always been about this place that I love. And so, as I mentioned in my opening, when Mike Savage announced he wasn't reoffering, all the dominoes started to tumble for me. And I took I'm kind of repeating in the opening, but I took a look around the city and I thought, this is the time. Like, I am being called back to live in Halifax full time and apply a career's worth, a lifetime's worth of skill and experience and love for this place at a time when my city needs it most to solve some of these most important challenges. It's an honor and a thrill to even be on the ballot, and I really hope I get a chance to do the work.
Thank you, Andy. And we know you're sending comments and questions, so that is great. I've seen some comments there for transit. So the next one is a pre-submitted question by Alex, and a few others have asked, how will you improve the reliability and efficiency of public transit in HRM, considering criticisms about its current state?
Yeah, it's not working right now, is it? The transit system is not delivering the service that people need. This is wrapped into congestion. Buses are affected by congestion just like any other vehicle on the road, like commercial vehicles or private automobiles. I'm going to sort of go in order here, but to start with the congestion that will help buses, we need to move road work from being done midday when people are trying to get to work and trying to get to school, and when the delivery vans are trying to keep the commerce wheels rolling, and move that work to evenings and weekends the way it is done in many other jurisdictions across Canada and around the world. I've been in conversations with the road building industry, the folks that do that work with filling the potholes and upgrading the curbs and all that kind of thing. They're delighted at the idea of going into evenings and weekends. They really dislike being in those dangerous high intensity traffic situations in midday. The other thing they would like to do is to stretch the construction season. They would like to start earlier in the spring and finish later in the fall. That lets them spread the work out over, so that's less impactful on our helps with congestion, but it also helps them to manage their workforce so that people can stay engaged and stay employed longer throughout the year, and all of that helps them actually bid more competitively. They can offer the service at a lower cost. So that's just the roadwork construction piece of it. Quickly, the short and long-term piece on transit. Short term, we can do a way better job of how we pay for it to get on the bus. Right now I have to load money from my bank account onto an app, then I have to buy tickets in the app, and then I get to tap my phone. Well, that would be great for 2010, but we're in 2024, and I would like to be able to just tap my credit card on my phone to get on the bus or ferry. So we're going to do that. But then there's this whole question of real-time GPS data that we have, but it's not being deployed in an effective way. So that would allow a user, for example, to understand exactly when the bus is not only supposed to be at their bus stop outside their door, but when it actually is going to be at the bus stop outside their door. So you can plan your doctor's visit or your getting to class or work on time effectively. those are the short-term plays: reduce congestion with the road work, improve the transit service. But while we do those things, the long-term play, the long-term play is we have to acknowledge that we have outgrown the ability of our traditional bus-based system to meet our needs. We need to get to the next order of transit, the more complex and innovative solution, which is going to be bus rapid transit. Bus rapid transit means busways that are separated from the rest of the traffic, unlike the bus lanes we have today that are intermingled. They run no matter what the traffic is doing. They have fewer stops, so they're express routes, high back chairs, comfortable. Maybe there's a pull down table in front of you, like on an airplane or a train. You can have your laptop going and your coffee on your way to work. You're coming in from Hammond's Plains Road, or you're coming in from Hubbard's or Porter's Lake, wherever you're coming from. A very enjoyable commuter experience. And the great news is on this, it's a tenth of the cost of the light rail proposal and can be rolled out in 3 or 4 years. Light rail, 10 times the cost, 15-year horizon to even get the solution on the ground. On the upside, we might get to light rail one day. On the upside, the bus rapid transit, or BRT system, will create the rights of way that ultimately could be upgraded to light rail, but the solution is so much faster. It's a third the time and a tenth the cost. So obviously we need to go with BRT. I'm also very interested in the way we use our harbor and the Northwest Arm. If we think of cities like, pick a city you've been to on the ocean, Boston or Toronto on a lake or Vancouver, the waterfront is bustling with watercraft of all kinds of different sizes, water taxis, aqua buses, going hither and yon all the time. We need that in Halifax. Imagine the load we would take off the Bedford Highway or the Prospect Road or the Herring Cove Road, or Windmill Road in Dartmouth, if we would just get more people into ferries instead of trying to cross the bridges or come in through the rotary. So those are some of the big ideas for transit. And I started to say the good news is that there's a tremendous amount of federal funding available for this now through a new, very deep-pocketed fund called the Permanent Public Transit Fund. And at the same time, the province has created the Joint Regional Transportation Agency, and they're very focused on how we can move goods and people better around, primarily around our capital region, around Halifax, but throughout the whole province as well. So this confluence of both of the other two orders of government being interested in the very solution that we want to put in place is very auspicious, I think, for Halifax. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you, Andy. So another common theme and question that we had a few people ask is, what are your stance on short-term rental regulations?
Where's the data? So I mean, I think there was a reactive process that the city council went through when the housing crisis started to emerge, and there was kind of a scurry to look around and see what can we do quickly that might have an impact, and somehow short-term rentals got put into that mix. I think the idea was that we're gonna clamp down on short-term rentals because they're taking affordable units out of the market, but so far the data hasn't, that change has happened, but so far the data isn't supporting it. So it's not clear that, coming out of good intentions, I'm sure it's not clear that effort paid off actually. In fact, it's possible it hurt the income of people who are maybe retirees who had developed a business plan to pay for their retirement by leasing an Airbnb unit and that kind of thing. I've also learned through discussions in community that the restrictions have had a negative impact on some of the outlying communities where tourism is really important. So I don't think I'm going to name any communities, but imagine communities outside of town who rely on tourist visitation, and now have fewer accommodations for tourists to stay when they visit. So I think it was well intentioned, but clumsy. And if adjustments are needed or warranted, they need to be based on data and real observations, not just on hypothesis. So I will always say I don't have the idea cornered on good ideas, the market cornered on good ideas. I always want to hear from people, and I always want to involve people in the decisions that will be affected by those decisions. So I'm looking forward to a sort of a renewed way of being consultative at City Hall after this election that would take into account both folks who maybe were earning a living from short-term rentals, or maybe who felt very challenged by short-term rentals, because I know both things can be true at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. And we're going to start moving with a few questions from the floor, as well as some pre-submitted questions. So someone from the floor just asked, is there a plan to adopt new technologies, such as AI, to accelerate administrative processes and improve the delivery and planning of municipal services?
Yeah, great question. It's in the platform. If you dig deep, my team and I were really excited about this over the summer, and we kept on talking about it at community events, but it didn't seem to get a lot of pickup. It doesn't mean we're not going to do it, but we kind of stopped talking about it because it didn't seem that very many people were interested. So I'm really happy about the question. Um, there are a couple of cities in Canada right now. One city is using cameras with GPS locators in them, mounted in the visors of the city vehicles. Those cameras are constantly scanning the surface of the roadways for potholes, and then the AI calculates which potholes need to be filled first. Because it's this kind of road maintenance geek stuff, but the longer and deeper a pothole gets, the more it multiplies in expense to fix it. Water gets in under the asphalt and creates more problems with seeping and freezing and all that kind of thing. So there's a whole art to getting the pothole before it reaches a critical point. And this AI, combined with GPS and cameras, is helping the city to manage their pothole and therefore save millions of dollars on road repairs. Another city is using AI to assist in online building permit applications. So this is almost like a chat bot. You would get into the city's system and be prompted for a number of inputs, dimensions of your site and so forth. How tall is your shed, or how long is your fence, etc. And rather than waiting in an inbox on someone's desk for weeks to finally get to, and then maybe a call back with a few follow-up questions and back and forth, and this is the challenge with how long approvals are, you can get that approval instantly. I think the catch in other cities is always that it still needs a human to sign off on it to make sure that it's all good, but it dramatically shortens approvals from weeks and months to days. So those are two ideas. I've already mentioned the use of data to improve transit. Again, open to ideas. Would love to figure out especially how the municipality can collaborate with other external organizations, other orders of government, to deliver in a collaborative way the services that people need. So I almost feel like let's bring the PodCamps back and get cracking on how we can use data to improve, and AI now to improve the way we deliver services.
Thank you, Andy. And yes, if you have any comments for the team, for Andy's team, you can just send them along here, or you can also reach out by scanning the QR code. Another question, Ashley Hill says, hi, Andy. How do you see nonprofits contributing to cities' long-term economic and social development? And what role would your administration play in fostering that growth?
Was it Ashley?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Ashley. Thank you for the question, and hi back. I want to tell you about my favorite example of this collaboration. In Mount Hope in Dartmouth, just beyond the Dartmouth General Hospital, the YWCA, and maybe you're going to wave your hand because you already know the story, but I'll tell it for the other folks that are listening. The YWCA and Clayton Developments are collaborating. This is a very unique collaboration. It's only the second collaboration of this style in HRM, where a not-for-profit who specializes in the service of providing housing and caring for the residents once they're housed, combining that expertise with people who know how to build houses, who know the contractors, who have the formwork for the concrete and all that. Bringing these two things together, and then with the not-for-profit status of the YWCA in this case, brings tremendous financial benefit to the whole project, resulting in lower cost of rent and mortgage at the end of the day. Multiplying the reduction in cost is the fact that this particular development is using factory-built townhomes. There are 3-story townhomes, and each floor, it comes in on the back of a truck, and they get stacked literally like Lego. And they're 3 stories high, and they're 5 townhomes wide, and they can build two of those mega blocks. So that's 10 homes in about 2 weeks on the site. This is incredibly affordable construction. It comes with the tax um, benefits of the not-for-profit, and in that case, it's built on low-cost land, which further reduces the cost of the housing. So these are the kind of partnerships that are possible, and I know that there are going to be a lot of people lined up to tell the story of the success of Mount Hope when it hits the ground and people start moving in. And I think it's going to be a really important model for others to follow. That's just one idea. I would say, like, sort of globally, under the heading of the municipality always has to listen to the people that have the knowledge. City council doesn't always have the knowledge. City staff doesn't always have the knowledge, admittedly. But we all need to be ready to collaborate with the people that do have the knowledge, and combine skills where they need to be combined. Thanks for the question.
And we're going to move on with a question from John here. What will you do to make it easier to build housing in HRM?
Yeah. So right now, obviously, we have a we have a housing shortage, and there are all kinds of things that need to happen to build houses faster. The different levels of government all have a role to play, but let's focus on what the municipality can actually do. And there are three distinct levers that the municipality has in its hands right now, today, that could be pulled, but that haven't been pulled to reduce the cost of housing and the volume of new homes being built. And I'm just going to go through them pretty quickly here. The first one is, I've already touched on, hurry up the applications time, the approvals times. We've got housing projects that are being held up through the approval process for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And what happens when you apply for approval, you start paying fees right away: the building permit fee, the development application fee, the Halifax water hookup fee, this mitigation fee, the roadway encroachment fee. All of these fees are front-ended, and then the builder has to carry those costs all the way through approval, the years of approval, then through the years of construction. All the while, those costs are gathering interest, and at the end, it's a big bill. And how does that bill get paid? It goes directly onto the rent or the mortgage of the housing unit that results. So by dramatically shortening the approval process while still being accountable, we can dramatically reduce the cost of new homes that are built. That's within our power to do today. That's the first one. The second one, I also mentioned in the Mount Auburn example about building on lower cost land. There is a tremendous amount of lower cost land in HRM that has been awaiting approval for development. In one case, almost as long as a decade, also in Dartmouth, Morris Lake East, it's called. And land cost is also obviously a huge contributor to the cost of your rent or your mortgage when that home is being built. So by approving that backlog of low-cost land, in that Morris Lake East example, the builder there has showed me his numbers, and he says he can deliver a new home for $100,000 cheaper than the current average cost of a new home in HRM. That's enormous. That's a 20% discount. Now, that's not going to house everybody, but it's going to house 20% more people, right? It's going to house a lot of people. That's a dramatic increase. So lower cost land. The third one is clearing policy roadblocks for really innovative styles of construction, like modular homes, flat pack factory built homes that arrive like an IKEA dresser and get assembled on the site in a really rapid period of time. So those three things, if we do those right away, those three things that are directly in the purview of the municipal government, we can reduce the cost of housing by double-digit percentage points in just a couple of years.
Thank you, Andy. And we're going to continue with the questions in the comments section. Thank you for everyone for continuing to comment. Red asks here, I believe a review of and improvement to HRM's road construction and repair specifications, tendering processes, construction oversight, and general quality control will result in significant improvement in road quality and overall cost reduction.
I'm just going to put my glasses on so I can read how that popped up on the screen. I believe review and improvement of HRM's road construction and repair specifications. Yeah. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. Sorry you had to see me in my my glasses. I mentioned earlier the conversations that I've been in with the road building industry. They the information they gave me that I'd like to verify should I become elected is that about 80% of the road work done in HRM right now is done by private contractors, and about 20% is done by HRM crews. And that the cost, I think the metric is the per ton of asphalt is how you measure the cost of the work. And the cost per ton of asphalt with the HRM crews is dramatically higher than the cost per ton of the private sector. So we really want to listen to the private sector and figure out what improvements we can make in the procurement process, the tendering process to get more of the private sector solutions, and then we can redirect the HRM staff to delivering more of the core services that would typically be provided by the municipality. So I've heard from a number of fronts that the procurement processes are odious and overly complicated, and I believe that's true. I experienced that myself when I was a planner at HRM years ago and procuring services. The gentleman that wrote that in, I would love to talk more, depending on what the result is after October 20th. I will certainly be talking with industry professionals and leaders about how we can make the procurement process better. Better outcome for taxpayers, but better for the service providers as well.
Thank you, Andy. And we're going to continue here with Isaac. Isaac said, how do you see yourself dealing with urban sprawl? Do you plan to encourage more walkable and homey developments?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Right to a planner's heart. Thank you. We were talking about congestion and how are we going to move people around and how can we make the roads more tenable and how are we going to waste less time moving around. I talked about moving road work to the weekends and about improving the bus system and making sure there are active transportation routes. But we didn't get to the importance of complete communities, building complete communities where you can both live and work. And I think that's where Itzhak is coming from here. Um, we are going to be growing, continuing to grow at the pace that we are, and the urban core cannot accommodate all of that growth, the growth pressures. We are definitely going to be moving out into the suburban areas and densifying around existing infrastructure in those locations. So think about places where 100 series highways intersect with the circumferential, for example. That's an ideal location for a transit hub, for a grocery store, for a fire station and a rec hall, a professional building. And if you're really intentional about building out those nodes, and we'll be building out a lot of them in the future, to make sure that they're complete and mixed use and have employment generators built into them, then we also help to draw a lot of people out of cars and into walkable, more healthy lifestyles. So we have to be clear-eyed that there will always be people commuting in and out of the city and downtown and crossing great miles. But by planning well, we can reduce the number of people that need to do that, and then people can start to make choices in their lives about how they want to live and choose where they want to live because they can live near where they work or live near where they go to school and walk or bike instead of having to buy a car. Or in some cases in the suburban areas, sometimes people have to have three cars. You know, you've got two parents and a kid or two kids and everybody needs a car. The problem multiplies very rapidly if we're dependent on cars and dispersed development. So yeah, we want to bring it all together as we grow and into complete communities. Thank
Thank
you.
you. We're going to move on with a more student-focused question. It was very Bubba said, what will you do for students?
For students, well, this is good. I enjoyed very much my time as an MP, being able to directly impact the lives of students. We were able to eliminate the interest payments on the federal portion of student loans. We were able to, delay the repayment of student loans until people met a certain income threshold or age. Um, there's not so much we can do at the municipality. What the municipality can do is to listen to youth, to convene youth councils. And I know there have been a variety of them over the years, to make sure that when the city is making rules for itself, making bylaws, making decisions on what it's funding and what it's not, that we're always carrying forward that very important youth perspective. Um, I really enjoyed the way that Mayor Savage began doing the annual International Student Welcome celebrations at the Central Library. That's a party basically, but it's a warm welcome, and I think that is important for the city to do as well. It doesn't result in jobs for people, but it results in a sense of belonging and wanting to be here. Um, and of course, at the end of the day, people need a place to live, and students and young people need a place to live. And there, we've discussed the levers that the city has already for that, on how we can make housing more affordable and how we can encourage universities, for example, to be building more housing on campus. And I'm really heartened to see. So far, I've had discussions with NASCAD, St. Mary's, and Dalhousie, and all are moving toward provision of more housing on campus, which is going to relieve pressure in the neighborhoods and open up more housing for other folks as well. So I don't have all the answers and the ideas, but I would always love to hear them if there are more to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question here. What is your platform on arts funding in the city?
We are better when we invest in the arts. I just had a beautiful evening at the opening of Nocturne down at Propeller Brewery, the opening gala. Maybe some listeners, some tuners in were there, um, where I was in intense and deep and really fulfilling conversation with a group of artists called the Noisemakers. And the Noisemakers are art students that have come from around the world to study at NASCAD and to participate in Nocturne. And it was such a vibrant reminder of what I already knew to be true, which was that our communities are better when we support the arts. There is this thing about we want to make communities that are livable, that attract people, and it's easy to think about. Excuse me, I have a cold. I beg your pardon. It's easy to think about the things that attract people, like a sports stadium or a transit system that works. But there's something else. There's something that like feeds our souls, and that's investments in the arts. It's an art gallery. It's a performing arts center. It's all the little art galleries that exist around town. It's the independent music scene that enlivens our nightlife here in the city. So that's when we truly develop a place where people want to be, and that draws more people, and that creates more prosperity, and this becomes a virtuous upward spiral that then draws more people and more money to support the arts. So I think supporting the arts in Halifax is vitally important. It's part of our DNA, with going back to Anna Leon Owens and the creation of NASCAD, and so many amazing independent galleries that exist around the city.
Thank you, Andy. There's a lot of great questions and coming along. We're going to try our best to go through all of them, so keep going. A question here: what are your intended plans for egress development for new and legacy urban areas to help foster safe and connected communities?
Yeah, what I'm hearing in the question is probably around the fires that we experienced last year. That underlined really clearly the fact that we have some communities that have thousands of people living at the end of a single road, like a big, crazy subdivision that all have to come out one road to escape a fire. That's problematic, not just in times of emergency, but it's problematic just for general congestion and the ability to move around and live your life and get to work and school on time, school buses and everything else. So it's really clear that the subdivision bylaws have had a flaw in them for quite a while. There were many subdivisions that should not have been approved in the way that I just described, and that really need to be interconnected. So here's the simple diagram. If you think of one cul-de-sac with houses all the way around it like this, it's a dead end. And so if there's a fire near the entrance, people are stuck in the cul-de-sac. If there's another cul-de-sac just like it beside it, then why in the world wouldn't we connect one end of the cul-de-sac to the other? So now we have a circuit where people can freely move, help to alleviate congestion, and in times of emergency, get out freely. That's a very simple diagram, but it applies even to those complex subdivisions that we have out in, well, I'm thinking of the Hammonds Plains and Tantallon area where the worst of the fires were. In my work over the summer and into the fall, I've been in contact with private landowners who are ready to come to the table with their land to help create those connections and create those secondary means of egress. They've been knocking at City Hall door. No one's really been answering, is what I'm told. So we need to start answering that door when landowners knock and are showing up with solutions. I kind of framed that in terms of the emergency egress. I hope that's what the questioner intended, But like I said, it does apply to good city planning in general. A grid is always better than a hierarchical system of roads. It's called a dendritic system of roads. If you think of the veins in a leaf, where every single road comes to a bigger road, and ultimately they all wind up on the stem. And that's really what happens at Hammonds Plains Road. Hammonds Plains Road is the stem, and all the leaves feed down onto it. A grid solution is way better. Hard to impose a grid on existing road structures, but you can improve it by creating these connections that we've been talking about.
Thank you. And Linda submitted a question here. I read your platform in which you noted your idea of teams going to people who set up tents in non-approved sites. What will you do if they do not want to move to shelter space as requested?
Yeah, well, we've got something to learn from PEI. That's where we borrowed the good idea. Remember, we don't have all the good ideas. We go looking for them and welcome them. So in PEI, when a tent turns up where it's not supposed to, this is what happens. The team of mental health professionals arrives. There's a mental health professional, a public health professional, a social work professional, and they do that in the context of a well-functioning relationship between the municipality and the province, where between the two orders of government, each within their own mandate, have the important solutions that the people living in the tent need. So they have a very good track record of it in Charlottetown. I haven't heard of any cases where there became an intractable situation. Not to say there haven't been. I just, in my research, no one has told us that story yet. So it's my hope that in working in a renewed partnership with the province, as we know right now, that relationship has been badly fractured by a lot of finger pointing and blame gaming between the two orders of government. But this election is a chance to reset that relationship. And here's why I have confidence in this. The province has been reinvesting, or I should say, returning to their investments in homelessness and low-cost housing, affordable housing, for the first time in about 30 years, in a really big way in the last many months. So they have been providing options for pallet shelters, for tiny homes. They've been pouring money into shelters, as has the federal government, and into small options homes. All these options that aren't tents, the things I just mentioned, pallet shelter, tiny home, shelters, those are all rungs on the ladder into the housing continuum and out of the tent. That's the ladder we need to help people get on, so that they can get their lives back in order. But as long as they're in a tent, their mental health and physical health spirals at an ever increasing rate the longer they're there, downward, and it gets harder and harder to bring them back out. So this is a compassionate response. This is helping people before they reach that point of despair. And with this new partnership with the province, and with those options being created even as we speak, I'm an optimist. I think that we're going to be able to solve this problem. And by the way, they're also the designated sites that if we can't find an option, we could help the person to move to a designated site and allow the undesignated sites to be used by the community in the way that the community kind of has a reasonable expectation to be able to use, right? It's like a social contract. Let's have some parks that support folks that need to live in tents right now, but let's have other parks that the broader community can use.
Thank you, Andy, and thank you, Linda, for the question. We're going to move along here from Kim. Kim asks, if mayor, how would you collaborate with all levels of government? What has been the roadblocks to achieving positive and productive and proactive collaboration to date as an MP? How would you do things differently compared to your most recent political position and the new one you hope to sit?
Yeah, it's interesting. How would I do it differently? I've had great success in my nearly decade in Ottawa, working across the aisle with all parties. Um, I'll give you one really good example that comes to mind. I had a private members bill called M45 passed in my first term, and that put a green lens on all of the massive spending that the federal government was doing on community infrastructure, transit, housing. That generational reinvestment that we were making in Canadian communities now has a green lens because of my private members bill. but I needed to draw support from, in this case, it was from the NDP to get it passed. So I found an NDP member whom I was very friendly with. He later went on to become the mayor of Vancouver, interestingly enough. Interesting trajectory there. But he had a private member's bill that was regarding protecting transgender rights, and that's something that I believe very strongly in. So when you have a private member's bill, it needs another member to be a seconder to second that motion. So I seconded his transgender rights bill. He seconded my green lens bill, and we both together we got both bills through the House. So I've never been a partisan when I've been in Ottawa. I've built relationships across all the aisles with all the parties, and no matter who forms government, I've got built-in relationships and trust with those people. Whoever will be the next prime minister, whoever will be the next minister of housing, whether it's continues to be the current government or a different one, I have pre-established, functional, positive, trusting relationships built in. Same goes with the provincial government. I've worked very hard to maintain good relations with my provincial partners through the previous provincial government and through the current provincial government. I have a very good working relationship with the premier. I've said that on my first day in office, the first thing that I do will be to call Premier Houston and tell him that he's got a partner in the mayor and in HRM Council in solving the housing crisis and the other challenges that we face together. So there is a way of working together that I've learned through a long career in both city planning and in Parliament that is about acknowledging that people can have diverse perspectives, but when we can work together respectfully and discern the shared objectives from within those diverse perspectives and then build a way forward based on the shared objectives, we can get a lot done. And that's what's been missing of late. I've been really saddened to see the council hurling bombs and buns and accusations and pointing fingers at the provincial government when the provincial government has actually really stepped up on the housing file right now. And you'll see this more and more. The current community services minister is just really nailing it with the supports for folks living in shelters and the purchasing of the smaller shelters. So I'm ready to step into that partnership in a really big way.
Thank you, Andy. A question and comment here. The city can begin to approve builds faster, but what is happening future dire circumstances, example fire and floods approvals for updating infrastructure is important too. Do you not agree?
The city can begin to approve builds faster, but what is happening is future dire circumstances, for example, fire and floods, approvals for up. Oh, I see. Okay, I got it. So it's not just about improving the rate of approving housing. We need to make sure that the supporting infrastructure is also being updated at the same time. Yeah. Great question. Sorry to have to slow down for a minute there. This has been plaguing HRM for a while, right? We're growing really fast, and the transit infrastructure hasn't kept up. Like the Halifax Transit always seems to be a decade behind our growth. The infrastructure in some cases of fire halls and the firefighters themselves hasn't caught up. Recreation halls and systems. I'm hearing a lot lately about swimming pools, how we're really short on swimming pools in the municipality. So the good news here is that, sorry, before I move on, that also applies to piped services like stormwater, water supply, wastewater, roads, sidewalks. All of those things need to keep up with the growth. The good news is, I mentioned a minute ago about how there is this new public transit fund of the federal government that's very, very well funded. There's also a residential infrastructure fund that's very well funded, $6 billion federal fund, specifically for what this question is asking about, for making sure that as we respond to the housing crisis and build houses, that we're also bringing along all the necessary infrastructure that comes behind it. So I'm in conversations now with the 10 or so major builders that build about 80% of the homes in HRM right now, to work with them and to work with the provincial government so that they and the municipal government together, the three of us, all make joint application to the federal government for this massive residential infrastructure fund. like I'm thinking in the range of like $1 billion might be on the table for this. I can't, I'm not going to sign it in ink, but there is a lot of money in that fund, and we are growing really fast. So we're a very good candidate for this if we have a good, strong joint application that shows that we're serious about building homes and solving the crisis. And I think that's what all these partners are really trying to do right now. So for sure, you've nailed it. We need to do way better at bringing infrastructure along in support of the along in support of the houses we're building.
Thank you. Another question here. We hear a lot about the needs of cyclists. As you mentioned before, what will you do to support the needs of people with disabilities and seniors as they try to navigate the city? And I know you alluded a little bit before, but expand a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So there are two categories I'll talk about, and I'm sure there are others, and people could raise their hand if I haven't covered something they wanted to hear about. But the first one is, let's just talk about Accessibus. We had the launch of my campaign headquarters a few weeks ago, and we had 3 guests arrive to celebrate the opening of the headquarters. And then when the event was over and my team and I were cleaning up, a few hours later, I think it was 3 hours later, we were leaving the building, and these 3 people were still waiting outside for the Accessibus. I couldn't believe it. It was absolutely heartbreaking. We're still waiting to get picked up by Accessibus. That led me into a conversation uh, with a senior member of the transit union. And before I even had a chance to tell him what I wanted to talk about, he launched into Accessibus and how he and the operators all see the problems with the way that the management is running the Accessibus program, and is full of ideas how to make it more responsive, more regular, more user friendly. And I know I'm going to be calling that guy back if I should be successful on October 19th. So mobility, that kind of is the bucket about mobility and making sure that people, whether it's Accessibus or kneeling buses, that people can have the dignity and the ability to get around the town in the way that they want to when they want to. That's one thing. But mobility is not just getting on and off of buses and out of vehicles. It's also getting around in your wheelchair, or on your walker, or with a cane, or whatever, or slowly, whatever your mobility style is. We need to be building our sidewalks and curb cuts and doorways into buildings in a way that people can use them. People of all abilities can use them. There was a federal act in the United States where I worked for a while after I graduated, called the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA. And I was really surprised to learn when I moved back to Canada that there was no equivalent in Canada. The ADA created guidelines for accessibility, right from the sidewalk level to the way buildings are designed, to the way that the tactile strips appear outside of a fire door, the braille letters on an elevator. Those in the United States all flowed from the ADA, but we didn't have one of those. Recently, the federal government did adopt a version of that, and it's slowly percolating through the system. But let's bring it back to the HRM and what HRM can do. We have something called the Red Book of Engineering Standards. It's an old name. I think it literally has a red cover on it, but that's the Bible for people, for the engineers that design and build the sidewalks and roadways, and it really needs updating. They're still building outdated curb cuts that are too steep, that the angles are not right. So we have work to do there. And I am looking forward to hearing about how the accessibility committee of council will join in that work with the new mayor. There is an accessibility advisor and a committee. I'm not sure I'm getting the committee's name right, but you understand what its mission is, to understand how we can do better design of transit and of the physical infrastructure of walking. Thank you.
Thank you. And John mentioned, will you continue the adversarial approach taken by some HRM councilors towards the provincial government?
Absolutely not. This is one of the biggest differentiators, differentiating me from the 2 other main contenders. I don't want to be in the business of complaining or talking bad about people, but we just have to look in the media to see that my competitors have regularly been treating the provincial government unkindly. So I'm focused on positive relationships. I'm focused on making sure that we're all working together really well. Like I said, I've worked really hard to build relationships with Premier Houston and his cabinet. They're working. We got a lot done when I was an MP working together, and we've got a lot more really good work today. So absolutely not adversarial. In my life, I never achieved anything worth achieving through means of being adversarial. Collaboration, cooperation, linking arms, and getting the job done together is exactly the way that I've been moving forward.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, John. Julia here asks, what will you do to support newcomers to Canada?
Yeah, that's a great question. The council also has a committee that I believe it might be the diversity. I'm not going to get the name right. There are too many committees, but it's exactly about listening to newcomers' challenges and adapting HRM policies to make things better and easier for folks. Um, Mayor Mike Savage created a lapel pin that he likes to wear. You may have seen it. It shows up on the website from time to time. It's like a multicolored pinwheel that represents the diversity of HRM. I really credit him for doing that. Our greatest strength is our diversity here in HRM. We absolutely are a better place for all of the different cultures that are remaining distinct and that are sharing their culture in all the different ways, the ways that you listen, the ways that you watch, the ways that you eat, the ways that newcomers are professionals and that are lifting up our economy. Um, all of these things need to be propelled forward, and I look forward to continuing Mayor Savage's work on maintaining Halifax as a very safe and inclusive and diverse place to be.
Thank you, and thank you, Julia. A long question here, but a good one. How can the municipality work with the province regarding mental health and addictions resources, key to helping those majority who are sadly homeless? Please note, I'm against safe supply. As Halifax grows, we don't want the issues I have seen on Ottawa streets here. I see Ottawa as a larger Halifax. We need to be proactive at all levels of government to these issues. Long-term and permanent solutions are required.
Yeah, thank you for that. The housing crisis is, as we've learned now, much more a mental health crisis than really a housing crisis. I think we could all, well, I'll finish that sentence there. The mental health vector on the homelessness crisis is enormous. We need to, for one thing, do a much better job of what's currently called the by name list. The by name list is kind of like a registry, if you'd like to use that word, of everyone who's living rough or homeless in HRM right now. The intention of it is that it keeps track of who everyone is and what barriers they're facing and what help they need to get past those barriers. But it's not effectively, the inputs are not effective. They're irregular. Different organizations input different data differently in different ways. So it's a very, it's a problematic database. So in my platform, which you'll find on the website, is the creation of a central intake system that has really clear criteria about what information needs to be added daily, updated daily in real time as developments happen in the encampments. That include the details about what challenges each person is facing. Only then can we effectively map people at this scale to the solutions that they really deserve and need. So that's going to include absolutely partnering with the provincial government, who carries health and mental health and affordable housing in the palm of their hands. We absolutely need that partnership, and this ties to the previous question. Right now, many of the challenges we're experiencing have to do with that fractured relationship and two orders of government going in different directions and working at cross purposes, not helping the people that need the help the most. So HRM can do the things that they can do to create low cost housing and in partnership with the provincial government to provide the wraparound supports, including mental health supports. I'll finish this one the way I've said it a few times before. I don't have every single answer, but I know that there are people that do, and maybe the questioner is one of them. But there are going to be a lot of conversations very quickly about how we can do better for our homeless population in HRM after this election. Thank you.
Thank you. A question here from Richard. Do you see opportunities that the municipality can seize to better utilize the natural asset of our Halifax Harbor to support the municipality?
Bravo, Richard. Yes, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. A couple of things. I want to start with a fun one, then I'll get into a serious one. There are many of us who have been very interested in bringing swimming back to Halifax Harbor, and so I worked with a person named Annika Riopel, whose name might be familiar to some, a few years ago to uh, make real her vision of creating a swimming hole down on the Halifax waterfront right outside the restaurant called Bicycle Thief. It's where the sculpture of the funny lampposts are. And we created a swimming hole there. We brought down 20 or 30 floaties. It was a beautiful, warm September Saturday afternoon. The water was like 22 degrees. It was crazy. And we had so many people. So that's one way I want to use the harbor differently, is getting people swimming in again, because it's beautifully clean now, except after heavy rainfalls, but it's still beautifully clean, and a great place to be and to recreate. But I think the question was probably more about how we're going to use it to move people. And I think that's a really good question. So we've already talked about the transit options for moving people around. Now, I was talking to a week ago, I was speaking to an ex HRM counselor, and she was reminding me that when the fast ferry idea first came up at the council 15 years ago, it included a route that went from downtown to Herring Cove, and it included some possibilities to go over to Burnside. It had more routes than just the Bedford to downtown Halifax route in it. So that's where I see the future. We're gonna get the Bedford fast ferry, but what else can we do? Maybe I said this already. Forgive me if I'm repeating myself. I've got a campaign brain, but if we think of those other cities like Boston and Toronto and Vancouver with ferries shuttling all over the waterfront, we can do that. Imagine how we can reduce the traffic on roads like Heron Cove Road and Prospect Road, if we bring in ferries. Mary, you can tell me when I'm repeating myself, and I'll shorten it up.
I think you mentioned that a bit
Okay.
of reducing traffic and then, yeah, and having lots of transportation on the harbor. But as you mentioned, it's campaign brain.
Campaign brain. It's also a really big opportunity for entrepreneurs to step into this space. Like I think there's an amazing opportunity here. The market will respond in all kinds of different ways when we just make the solutions possible, get the barriers out of the way.
Yeah,
And by the way, we're starting to see the harbor be used more for recreation, and it's really great.
absolutely. Thank you, Andy. A question here from Stephen. As mayor, how would you do to make Mi'kmaq culture better represented in Halifax?
Oh, beautiful question. Thank you, Stephen. Uh, for context, my time as MP has well. For one thing, I began my career as an MP by becoming the chair of the Indigenous and Northern Affairs Committee, which was like a master's class in Indigenous Crown relations and reconciliation and residential schools. It was heartbreaking, and it was majestic. The culture is so majestic in its beauty, but heartbreaking in the way it's been treated over the years. This just landed so much for me with the Mi'kmaq experience here in Nova Scotia, and how different those experiences can be, and how negative they can be, but also how they don't have to be that way. How we can do so much better, and it's really easy to do better. So I quickly got involved with the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center at the beginning of my tenure, and before I finished as MP, we managed to get around $40 million of federal funding to build the new Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center, which, as you can see, the site is being prepared now. So this is extremely important. To me, that doesn't matter. It's really important to the urban Indigenous community in HRM, and that's who we're doing it for. So the way that land acknowledgements have been normalized, the way that using Chibuktuk, in conjunction with Halifax, has really been normalized. I think it's absolutely fundamental to the cultural health of our province. And when this Mi'kmaq Friendship Center opens in the core of our downtown, right next to the bastion of colonialism that is Citadel Hill, it's going to be remarkable. And Parks Canada and the Friendship Center are already working together on how to do cross programming to like tell the story of colonialism in Canada. This is going to be amazing. This is going to be like a flag post in our downtown saying, "This is Mi'kma'ki, this beautiful building," and I'm here for it. It's so exciting.
Thank you. Very important. And thank you, Stephen, for the question. We're going to move forward here. Rosemary from Fall River, Wellington asks, how would you ensure that residents outside of downtown without sewer, water, or sidewalks aren't overpaying on property taxes? Our taxes are already too high, and traffic in Fall River, Wellington is unbearable and can support further development.
Great question. Thank you very much. And as you can imagine, I, along with all of the candidates for mayor, are hearing about this very question nonstop throughout the campaign. So it's clear that something needs to change. We're dealing with the legacy of amalgamation. The question asker might agree with that, where the dials weren't adjusted maybe as carefully as they should have been to match taxes paid to services received. I do believe there's work ahead there. I think it's incumbent on the council to listen to communities across the HRM to figure out, first of all, what services they want, because in some cases they're overserviced and would like the city to back off a little bit. In other cases, they're underserviced. But in many cases, there's a mismatch between the value and the service being provided. So there's the work that lies ahead. It's hard for me to speak. I've spoken to so many different communities about this over the summer. It's hard for me to speak directly to the Fall River Wellington case, but what the questioner said rings very true, and I've heard it many, many times. So I guess stay tuned for some work on the municipal tax regime, and it's going to require community members to participate and be part of a better solution.
Thank you. And Elizabeth in our comment section mentioned thoughts on incorporating more community gardens across HRM.
Love it. If the Isthmus of Chignecto goes underwater, we've got 2 days worth of groceries on our shelves. That's unacceptable. I'm so thrilled. 3 weeks ago now, I went to the Fairview Farmers Market and I picked up a really nice looking bag of tomatoes and a bag of mixed greens. And I said to the person I was buying them from, where were these grown? And she said, at the Common Roots Farm at By High Park. It was absolutely incredible. I loved that answer. For folks who may not know, the Common Roots Community Garden used to be at the old Queen Elizabeth High School site at the corner of Quinpool and Roby, where the hospital is now being built. And in my days as MP, we helped the then director, Jamie Melrose, scour the municipality for new sites to move that garden. And we helped her to find the site at By High Park. And so like it was a full circle moment to get this bag of beautiful tomatoes from that location. What Hope Blooms is doing, what neighbors are just finding out how to do around their neighborhoods. More and more vegetable gardens popping up in front yards. What can the municipality do? Make sure that there aren't any bylaw impediments to that. Make sure that slivers of unused but otherwise productive for food production purposes land could be made available to communities. I think we have a lot of work to do there. And also, this is part of accelerating and lifting up the work of the mobile food bank, for example, the mobile food market, rather. They're doing incredible work in Dartmouth for communities all around the region. We need more of that.
Thank you, Andy. And we are preparing ourselves for our final question. Thank you for everyone who has commented. You can keep contacting Andy, go to their website, the QR code here to vote as well live. Are you ready for your final question, Andy?
I am.
What is your vision for the future of our city? And thank you for someone who asked it.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, we are already one of the most beautiful and remarkable places to live in the world. We've got some growing pains we're dealing with. We are going to work through them, and we are going to become a fabulous place where everyone is lifted up by the prosperity that we share. We're going to continue to draw investments from around the world. We're going to continue to educate the brightest minds in the world. We're going to continue to provide community options and housing options for everybody who needs it. We're going to do way better than that in the future than we have been able to do recently. This is going to be a community of communities that are thriving in their own way, and this constellation around our beautiful capital city, interconnected by a transit system that runs smoothly and on time, that keeps people in their classrooms and in their jobs, and it keeps the wheels of commerce moving at all times. A city that has recreation facilities that support the aspirations of burgeoning young athletes, that academic infrastructure that supports the aspirations of burgeoning academics, that capitalizes on our natural assets like the harbor and George's Island and our beautiful beaches, and makes all those places readily accessible to the people that live here. We are going to be one of the cleanest and greenest, most livable, cosmopolitan 21st century capital cities in the world. And I want to be here when that all comes to be true.
Thank you so much, Andy. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We really enjoyed the question and answers. Andy, do you have any final statement or closing remarks?
Just a quick one at the end. This election really is about change. If you look at the three front runners, we've got two councillors that between them have about 16 years on council, and we're looking at a municipality that needs significant change. The experience that I laid out at the front end of this conversation, that of 25 years of being a city planner and community planner, and 10 years, nearly 10 years of being a parliamentarian, working with all orders of government and public and private sector, could not map better to the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. So this election really is about, do you want change? So I invite people to sort of look around, and if they're okay with the encampments the way they are now, if they're okay with the congestion and the state of transit, if they're okay with the pace of the constructions of homes in a housing crisis, well, then you know how to vote. You can vote for the status quo. But if you want better and more and faster, I invite you to take a look at my platform, and I hope I can earn your vote. Mary,
Thank you,
thank you for
everyone.
doing this tonight.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. As you know,
Everybody.
you can learn more at andyfillmore.ca, and you can vote today.
Thanks, everybody, for your time. I'm really grateful.